Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you call it when an incredibly violent IO interactive character teams up with a not yet in season holiday character to wreak havoc on the Who's of Whoville?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Kane and Grinch.
Oh my god.
Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone. We'll have to save this episode, and move it to December.
I know, I was
seasonal.
like, Happy Halloween, here's my Christmas-themed joke. Happy Halloween, the Grinch is a children's character.
The Grinch is kind of scary.
The Grinch is kind of scary. The Grinch probably does some nonsense to Whoville for Halloween, just to kind of keep them away. Would
the Grinch be a fan of Halloween? He probably wouldn't like the commercialized version of it. He'd want to scare them,
It's, does he do trick or treat, but he gives out, apples.
Yeah, probably. That sounds right.
He definitely dresses up Max in some kind of, scary way. Anyway, listeners, thanks for tuning in. I'm your cozy and out of ideas for jokes host, Madelyn.
I'm your aggressively ugly host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning into this week's show. Happy Halloween! We do have kind of two takes on horror here, I think, this week.
Yeah, kinda.
Our old game this week, as maybe you picked up from the joke, is gonna be Kane and Lynch. And our new game is Cozy Grove. So don't fast forward to the mashup.
Nope.
It's gonna be a mess.
It's gonna be, you know what? I bet it'll be entertaining.
They're both games that are very kind of conscious of their audience in a weird way. You just have
to come up with something smart, is what you're saying.
You can only murder for 30 minutes a day.
Oh my god.
Then the murder clock ends.
Hey, that's interesting already,
It's called an arcade game. Anyway, I'll let the me of 30 minutes from now deal with this conundrum. But let's dive into our first dynamic duo. What a word for them.
Yeah.
Kane and Lynch.
Yeah.
So at Emma's request, we're talking about both games, which I think is wise. There are interesting things to talk about both Kane and Lynch games.
And they're both old
games. Yeah. So Kane and Lynch 2 won't get lost in we talked about one in the series, purgatory, that every major video game series is in right now for the podcast.
Yeah. We'll have to reevaluate that at some point. Figure that out.
2022.
Yeah.
So Kane and Lynch, the first game, Kane and Lynch Dead Men, came out for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Windows in 2007. Developed by IO Interactive, the developers of the Hitman series. Mm-hmm. Which we talked about Hitman on the podcast not that long ago. I think it was sometime this year.
The episodic ones, the side quest.
But no, because I played Hitman 3. So we also, I think, talked about Hitman 3.
Oh, yeah, I think we did talk about Hitman 3 at some point. Or maybe, I don't remember if it was a new or old game, but we did, yeah.
Hitman has featured on the podcast before. So, IO Interactive, here they are for our Halloween episode. First one is published by Eidos. Second one published by Square Enix before they decided they were done with IO. And in Kane and Lynch, and Madelyn does the overview of the story in a little bit, but to set the stage, you play as Kane, which is a nickname for Marcus something, right?
It's Kane.
Kane, we're gonna go with Kane. And you're an ex-mercenary, and you're on death row, but you're going to your execution, when along with another inmate, Lynch, you manage to escape in, like, the prison van crash, and then everything just goes to hell, basically.
Yeah.
And you kill a lot of people all around the globe to try to de-hellify it, and maybe definitely make it much worse in the process.
Yeah, in the first game, the reason you're doing all of this is because Kane's wife and daughter have been kidnapped, and Lynch is just sort of there, I believe.
Yeah.
Lynch just comes along because he's a little bit out of it, mostly. And then in the second game, Dog Days, this sort of happens for really no particular reason. There isn't really... Kane wants to do, like, one last job, and that's the reason why everything goes to hell, basically.
Yeah. Lynch is like, I'm in China, you want to do an arms deal? Kane's like, okay. And then everything goes bad.
Yes.
So Kane and Lynch, it's really much more interesting. Like, it's funny in that late aughts, early 2010s, the second one came out in 2010, way of usually I feel like the kind of third-person shooters we talk about from this zone are like, oh, like, maybe there's something kind of interesting about the gameplay, but for the most part it's like, like, these are pretty bland.
Yeah.
And with Kane and Lynch, I think it's really the gameplay that is the bland part. It's a third-person shooter, but from all of the reviews I've read, the actual gameplay of it kind of sucks most of the time. There's some interesting stuff going on with the co-op of you play as Kane, but you can have a second player play as Lynch. And there's also, like an online multiplayer thing that happens. But when you have that local co-op where you play as Lynch, because the character suffers from hallucinations and, like, psychotic breaks, the character will sometimes see all of the people on screen as you spend a lot of time killing cops, so as cops or as enemies or as people with animal heads, and so then you have to kill them all, even though the Kane character can see that they are bystanders. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a neat trick. But for the most part, a neat trick, I say, about slaughtering innocent bystanders. But it's a neat development trick.
You could get it.
But the gameplay itself, for the most part, seems to be, like, kind of relatively forgettable. And it's all the stuff around the games and some of the design decisions that goes into the games that make these worth talking about. As well as just the unhinged story.
Yeah. Why we do our themed intros, and I introduced myself as the aggressively ugly host. And that's mostly because the most common descriptor in all the, like, reviews and retrospectives and stuff that I read is calling the Kane and Lynch games, like, really ugly games. And kind of in a positive way. Like, they were saying they're ugly, but most of these retrospectives were like, this game's really interesting. Because it purposely, especially in the case of the second game, it really purposely is like, yeah, we're gonna lean as far possible as we can get into, like, making this a discomforting, ugly, like, assaulting of the senses experience as we can, like, on purpose.
Yeah, like, not only are Kane and Lynch ugly men, and not only is the game ugly in that kind of PS3 generation way that it's ugly, the first game, I think it's difficult to say that element of it is on purpose. Right? I mean, certainly Kane and Lynch are ugly looking on purpose, but I think it's still accurate to describe both games as being really aggressively ugly in not exactly the morality they promote, right? Because I think it's clear from these games that the developers are not co-signing this. right?
No.
But they're aggressively ugly, and they're just, like, very, very, very violent. And there's basically no redeeming factor to any of that violence. It is just violence that begets violence that begets violence. Which is true of, you know, if you want to do the talk this thing where you dig in and you say, but Nathan Drake kills a billion dudes, right? Mm-hmm. As all of these reviews really liked to point to Nathan Drake, which makes sense because that is the contemporaneous reference for the time. Yeah. But none of these games do not bother to try to really make you sympathize with Kane and Lynch.
No.
Like, Kane has his daughter that he cares about, sort of, in the first game, but even that is, like, she really hates him by the end.
It's really key, even before the end, I think. Like, it's just, like, key that, like, even though he's, you know, like, telling himself he's doing this for his daughter, like, she really does not like him at all. And everything he does makes things, like, worse for her. And especially in the second game where they're sort of estranged at this point. He wants to do this job so he can send money to her. And there's sort of this, I read a lot of things as like, there's sort of a sense of like, he's trying to guilt her into like wanting him in her life, by like, you know, doing like, I'm doing all these things for you, you know, in that sort of unpleasant way, that's not genuine in its care for a person, right?
Yeah. So what kind of things is he doing? Here we go. Buckle in, folks. I'll try to make the synopsis. I've tried to eliminate the most graphic parts of the synopsis of these two games. But let me give you the overview. So if you aren't familiar, you know what we're dealing with here when we talk about ugly. So like I said at the beginning, Kane is on death row. He's driving over to be executed when Lynch tips him off that there's going to be an escape, and they escape. But they immediately are confronted by the Seven, who, like Emma said, are holding Kane's wife and daughter hostage if he doesn't pay up this like huge amount of money that they accuse him of having stolen. Now, it turns out he didn't steal it, but he does still know where it is. So Kane and Lynch decide that they're going to go steal it from the bank that it's in. So they go rob the bank. That seems to go fine until Lynch has a psychotic break because his meds wore off and he kills all the hostages at the bank. So that's pretty bad. They have to make a getaway really fast after that happens. Oh, now it's time to go to Tokyo to find the other money. So they go to Japan. There's like a crime lord there that they're dealing with. Once again, they take hostages. They take his daughter hostage. And once again, Lynch kills her by mistake. This whole game is about just them screwing up by killing people over and over and over and over again. I don't know why. Yeah. Like, after that first incident at the bank, it does not really make sense why Lynch is brought along on this journey. But whatever. Kills the crime lord's daughter.
It doesn't make sense in the way that, like, a rational, logical person thinks about it. And neither Kane nor Lynch are that person. So I think it's important to say, like, I feel like that's consistent.
That's fair. So, they killed the crime lord's daughter. That screws up the plan. So they can't get that second half of the money. They've got to come back with just half. So they do that. Surprise! Lynch is going to betray Kane. I guess that's why he came along, because he has this betrayal plan. But then the Seven double-crosses him, too. They're all going to be executed. Kane's wife is killed, but he manages to save his daughter and save Lynch. And now they get together the Ocean's 11 of criminals. Except not like Ocean's 11, where the criminals are all George Clooney.
The D
George
team,
Clooney plays
Ocean's
everyone.
11.
What?
Yeah, George Clooney played everyone in Ocean's 11. Real.
Correct.
I'm saying the D team, Ocean's 11.
Right. They call themselves the Dead Men. So just like a super squad of like bad criminal dudes. Including one that's like maybe Lynch killed this other guy's wife too. Messy stuff. So they take a quick stop to Japan where they kill the Japanese crime lord, grab the rest of the money, and then they go to Cuba to kill the rest of the Seven. They get to Cuba, stuff happens, now we're in Venezuela. Jenny's been captured again. Jenny is Kane's daughter. They fail to rescue her a couple times, then rescue her. There's some explosions, helicopter action. Jenny is pissed and wants to kill Kane because he's a bad dad. And then it's the end of the game, and you get the choice. We got a nice little choice-based ending here, where either you can get on the plane with Jenny and escape and leave people behind, or you can turn around and rescue the people from your dead men squad that are left behind. And as we know from recent media, you don't get on the plane, you turn around, you could get on the plane. If you get on the plane, your daughter lives, but she hates you. If you don't get off the plane, you go back to rescue people, but they all die anyway, and it looks like Jenny dies, although apparently, canonically, she does not die. The end.
Still probably hates you, though.
Yeah, well, probably even more, because she's been, shot.
Yeah.
So that's game 1. Game 2 just gets worse, right? So 4 years later, Lynch has been living in Shanghai. He's got a girlfriend now. He works with a crime syndicate in Shanghai. He's gonna do, an arms deal smuggling guns to Africa. So he calls Kane. He says, Kane, remember how great everything worked out last time we worked together? Why don't you come to China and do another job with me? And as Emma said, these are not rational men. So Kane goes to China. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of brutal violence that happens, basically. But what happens is, before they even start this arms deal, they accidentally kill the daughter of an important political figure. And that means that they and everyone around them are basically just dead men walking. And so they have to kill all of their former associates. Basically everyone they come into contact with, they have to kill. They get brutally tortured at one point. A lot of violence against Asian women in this game in a way that I feel like is distasteful, even if they're trying to make the point that it's distasteful. But Lynch's girlfriend gets brutally killed. They get tortured and have to fight their way naked through the streets of Shanghai. Mm-hmm. Right? This is what this game is. Eventually, they finally manage to get out of the country by hijacking a commercial aircraft. And that's the end of the game. All because these incompetent dudes killed someone they shouldn't have at the very beginning. Again. Just like happened the first time.
I read a few interviews with some of the creative staff. Jens Peter Krupp, who is Dead Men's creative director, was talking about how they wrote a lot of scenes just based on how they think those characters would actually react in a situation. So they were talking about the Tokyo level where everything goes badly. It's well, they've been on a plane for 16 hours, which I get. They're tired, they're getting pushed around, and you just can see Lynch getting more and more upset, and so you turn the corner and you're I know Lynch is gonna do something bad, is the idea. It was a really interesting interview in Vice I was reading, because in the end they were wow, I really hate some of the stuff we did in this game. They wish they had done, there were cutscenes where there were violence, but they wish they hadn't done the cutscene because they felt it went against, the idea of the game versus, you, the player, doing it. And they're the second half of the plot totally falls apart because we just needed them to be pulled around by something, and we were whatever.
Yeah, who's why are they in Cuba? I don't know. They are, sure.
It was really interesting to read. So one of the last sentences at the end that I thought was really interesting was saying, I was perfectly fine with the bashing it got from a mechanical standpoint, but I was disappointed with the lack of interest people had in trying to get the characters. I thought they'd have been more interested, and if I had an art project, I would have been right, but I had a commercial project.
Yeah, that's something that struck me a lot in reading about these games as well, particularly the second one. I saw some interesting analysis that was okay, it basically seems with this second game that IO was okay, as opposed to usually when you make a sequel, you go, what did people like about the first game? And let's lean into that. I saw a couple of different analyses or retrospectives of the second game being this game really seems like they looked at it and they said, what are the things that people didn't like about the first game? And let's just, like, amp those up to 11. So the first game is very much, like, this sort of, like, specific genre of crime thriller horror, right? It's, like, trying to be a movie, sort of, in that way. The second one doesn't give you, like, really any backstory. It's just, like, these dudes screwing up. Oh, like, they screw up once, and then they just have to kill and kill and kill and kill and kill to stay alive over and over and over again. The second one, also notable for its very distinct visual aesthetic of everything is portrayed as kind of through this, like, shaky cam footage.
Yeah.
Which is a clever way to cover up the graphical troubles of the, you know, of designing in that generation, perhaps, but also adds an element of grittiness and an element of discomfort as a player to it, where you never have this kind of comfortable, like, attempt at just, like, nice realism. We just have this awful camera work happening the whole time. There's, if not an antagonism toward the player in Kane and Lynch 2, there is a disinterest in catering to this being a fun experience, or a disinterest in saying, like, oh, you can have the fun of the shooting without it being really brutal, which I think is something that is just so generally accepted in games. Like, yeah, we're not going to make you feel bad that you're shooting a bunch of people, and not that Kane and Lynch is going out of its way to make you feel bad, but it is not doing the smoke and mirrors that most action-adventure games do, of pretending that you're a hero, or pretending that it's justified, or that the people you're killing deserve it. It's just them trying to stay alive at any cost.
Yeah. Yeah, so I also read an interview with art director Rasmus Poulsen, who was talking about, like, around this time YouTube was really coming out, but in the early, like, YouTube stuff, it was all this sort of non-polished footage of people, like, recording things and doing things.
Dual-wield.
Yeah, they were really apparently pretty interested in that aesthetic. They also spent a while in Shanghai just doing, like, art research. And they were saying as they continued, like, their pictures and stuff got sort of blurrier and more out of focus, and they really liked the sort of look of that. One of their taglines, which I do think is a little bit, like, you know, 2010 edgy, but does sum up their ideas: real is not pretty, basically. And that is definitely sort of what they were going for. Because in addition to, like, the shaky cam footage, which is literally, like, there's a cameraman following Kane and Lynch around, and so the player is sort of both controlling the characters and also this sort of cameraman who will fall over, like, when your character dies, like he got caught in the crossfire, or like, nudity and specifically headshots are pixelated out. So, like, when you shoot someone in the head, the head gets all pixely. Like, it's using that idea of, like, implying the horror of it without showing it, that makes it sort of more brutal in a way, you know? But also is just, like, the way film was handled back then with violence like that. And when you get hit with fire, like, the whole screen sort of gets very hard to tell what's going on. And when you're firing around, you don't have very good aim. So you're just sort of, like, spraying bullets randomly. And you might hit who you're going for. You might hit a random civilian who happens to be there, because it's very hard to tell, you know? So, like, it really leans into this sort of I saw snuff film a lot aesthetic within this whole game, which certainly makes it stand out, although at the time you got a lot of people saying I was nauseous and it was ugly and it wasn't fun. And only recently has it had, like, sort of a critical reevaluation in a lot of ways.
The second one is also only about 5 hours long.
Yeah.
And obviously at Talk This, we're not, you know, over here being like, my money for the 5-hour game. But I think it's interesting from the brutality standpoint of something I pretty much always assume when I'm reading game synopses is like, okay, but like there's a bunch of like nothing between all of that. Not nothing, but there's a bunch of like playing the game between all of that. And that really cannot possibly be the case with this game because there's so much that happens that there really isn't breaks between that level of brutality that is happening at all times.
Yeah. I read a couple of things that was like, it's only 5 hours, but if it was longer than that, I think it would it would be too much. So it really feels like they cram this sort of awful, nauseating experience into 5 hours, and then that's it.
It's like, how did they think that this was gonna work? It's a really bold art move, and it's the kind of thing like, you know, people like really kind of campily violent film, right? And also, there's a long history of making film that is like good, interesting art, but not especially fun to watch. And that's true of like pretty much all other art media, right? There's a long history of like, it doesn't have to be fun to look at or fun to read or fun to experience, but it can be art. And that weirdly, again, look, all of this is giving a lot of credit to the development team, and some of it may just be the game is bad, right? But clearly they were thinking about these things, so I'll lean toward more credit. But they really seem to have been, like they said, trying to make almost a weird art piece. And it's just like, when are games going to be ready for you to hate the protagonist and have no redeeming qualities and, you know, have nothing likable or humorous or whatever about the game and just be bleak?
Yeah, this one interview with the art director, he said, due to various circumstances, that there was sort of a financial crisis and people were being more careful with their money, for one thing. And also the controversy with the first game, where a reviewer at GameSpot was fired for giving a 6 out of 10 to Dead Men, due to pressure from the publisher, Eidos, rather than IO, who had sort of like bought out the whole GameSpot website with like advertisements for Dead Men. And like GameSpot for a while was like, no, it wasn't because of that, it was because of other things. But lately, Jeff Gerstmann, it was just been like, yeah, it was basically because of that, because I was giving low reviews and they didn't know how to deal with marketing versus editorial, basically, at the time. So they were aware of that, and they're like, well, everybody's already not going to be into this game. So they're like, well, let's just go all in on this aggressive aesthetic that we've decided on, and just go as hard as we can. Which, you know, I guess that makes sense.
It's just very bold. I'm impressed by the boldness of that decision to just be like, let's make a game that is actively unpleasant to play, mostly. Or actively unpleasant to experience, perhaps. Yeah. It's just fascinating. I'd be fascinated to be a fly on the wall at the meetings, discussing the direction of that game. Although no doubt they would have been they're Swedish, right? Or something like that. They maybe would not have been in English, and I just would have been like, ooh, huh.
Ooh. I think a Kane and Lynch is especially interesting in contrast to Hitman as well, in which that game is all about the sort of elegance and comedy of violence in a lot of ways. Whereas Kane and Lynch is just like, you know, ugly. This is ugly.
Yeah, they do make an interesting duo.
Response to that, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think of those as coming from the same place, particularly the second game that has such, if not disdain, right, but such like distaste for it, while at the same time leading heavily into it. So how much distaste could there possibly be? Whereas, yeah, Hitman is all about, like, elegant violence and, like, restrained violence and, like you said, the potential for humorous violence. It's a fascinating duo there. Trio, I guess. Kane and Lynch and the agent. So, are we ready? Oh, last thing. Kane and Lynch was in film talks for a while. And then
That's so funny.
Yeah, so originally it was going to be Bruce Willis and Jamie Foxx.
That's so funny.
And then it was going to be Gerard Butler and Vin Diesel. And it's like,
Oh my God.
These are the men for these. Yeah.
No, they're too good looking. You know, they're too, like, movie star. Kane and Lynch are not very attractive men.
Like, that's fair, but I am interested in the idea of, like, a Bruce Willis or a Vin Diesel in a film. I mean, not that the film would actually do this, but in a theoretical film that was just, like, you know, being like, violence is gross. Or,
Yeah.
like, you know, violence begets more violence. It's like, that's interesting from, like, these particular actors.
That's true.
Even if they aren't as aggressively ugly as Kane and Lynch. That's what CGI is for.
That's fair.
So now for something completely different, huh?
Yeah.
Cozy
Grove.
Cozy Grove, also about the brutality of violence.
There is some death in it, but it's all post-death, so...
Exactly. Cozy Grove is all the people who were killed in Kane and Lynch.
No.
No. Cozy Grove came out in April for Switch, PlayStation 4, Steam, Xbox. I think it was a little earlier than that for Apple Arcade, perhaps, of this year. It's from Spry Fox. And of course, you can't write a review about a game that is even slightly like Animal Crossing without saying it's kind of like Animal Crossing.
Yeah, it struck me as, like Animal Crossing, and like if we did an Animal Crossing Spiritfarer episode.
And I actually really think it's a lot closer to Spiritfarer than it is to Animal Crossing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Both in terms of art style and in terms of the way the gameplay is actually kind of structured. Look, you know, the resource gathering, the ways you resource gather are more similar to Animal Crossing, but I do think the overall kind of gameplay experience, this is the one I played this week, perhaps not surprisingly. I don't know how you can you play Kane and Lynch now? Maybe it's on Steam.
I think it's on Steam.
But I don't know that they've been brought to semi-modern consoles.
And PlayStation 3. You technically still have
That's
the
true.
PlayStation 3.
I would have to buy funds on my PlayStation 4 and then go to my PlayStation 3 to buy Kane and Lynch. But I could do that. You're right. Anyway, yeah, it reminds me a lot more of Spiritfarer than it does of Animal Crossing. This is the one that I played. I started this a couple days ago so that I could have a little bit of the experience of the gameplay flow that we're going to talk about a bit. But in this game, you are a spirit scout. It's kind of like a spooky Girl Scout, right? And you're on the island of Cozy Grove. By mistake, you were supposed to go to like Cozy Cove. You go to Cozy Grove, and as a spirit scout, like this is your first solo camping endeavor, and you're here to like help the spirits of the island, like resolve their wishes, right?
Who are bears, by the way.
Yes, they are bears. This is why I feel like it's like this is so Spiritfarer, because it's like we have our animal spirits. I know in Spiritfarer there are people who are animals, and these ones might literally be bears, or half bear, half seagulls in the case of the
I saw that
Goldberg
one. I thought that was so funny. It's like, that's a seagull. It's like, no, it's a seagull bear.
Yeah.
Okay, of course, game.
Look, just because he looks like a seagull, he can be a bear.
That's true. You're right.
So you're here to like help all of these bear spirits around the island with like their wishes and their various fetch quests in exchange for resources and spirit logs that you feed to your flame companion, Calcifer. Flamey, to say.
Flamey.
And as you help them, the color comes back to the island, and it looks cute.
The other thing that's similar to Animal Crossing is technically it does take place in real time. So when you sign in will be the time of day the island is at that time. Unlike Spiritfarer, which just had a cycle.
That's true. So you're right. I'm just saying, I don't know. For whatever reason, as someone who's played both games, you've played both games too.
No, I agree. It definitely feels more like Spiritfarer. That's why I was like, it's like if we made the mashup. You can see the Animal Crossing elements, you know?
Yeah. So overall, it's a chill and relatively relaxed game. It definitely harkens back in its pacing of the content, I would say, to like the experience of playing the first couple of weeks of Animal Crossing this past year. Because something that I feel like really fades away in Animal Crossing after the first like 2 weeks, month of play, especially if you're playing it to the degree that everyone was playing it early pandemic, is in those first few weeks there are actually things you have to wait for, right? It's like the museum isn't going to open until the next day. The Nook store isn't going to open until the next day, right? There are things that actually operate on a time scale. And also in the beginning you have really concrete goals. I'm not sure I ever got to the point where I like fully paid off my last home loan, although I am feeling like, well, I'll log back in a little bit in November. I'm starting to feel like I need that that structure, that external to-do list in my life again.
I'm too scared to log into my island and see what a mess it is.
It's fine. It'll be fine. There'll just be some weeds.
Yeah, the difference, I think, between Animal Crossing and Cozy Grove that really distinguishes it is, like, Animal Crossing is like, you need to be here to get this thing. You know, like, special event, special visitor on this day. You have to be there every day so that you don't miss anything. And Cozy Grove's like, check in every day. There's some stuff to do, you know. Not really, you know, any penalties for missing anything. You just sort of do your thing, and then you close it for the day.
Yeah, as Emma mentioned, Cozy Grove really is structured around the idea of logging off. And in many ways, that is probably the ideal way to play Animal Crossing too, right? The ideal, healthy way to play Animal Crossing is probably to play no more than an hour a day, likely less. Now, as we all know, did anyone play it that way in March and April of 2020? You may have.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about that. I saw a lot of things as like your daily tasks in Cozy Grove is like half an hour maybe, and then you can do some other stuff if you want to. And I felt like, I was like, man, my daily task in Animal Crossing was like an hour. And then if I wanted to do anything else, like decorate a certain part of my island or, you know, decorate a new room in my house, that would be like another relatively substantial chunk of time in addition to that hour of doing my daily tasks, you know, of like weeding, gathering the fruit, checking in the store, you know. And I felt like maybe that's why I fell off of it, because I felt like there was always too much to do in Animal Crossing.
But see, I think that's a little bit, that's the trick of Animal Crossing, this kind of like, this being pulled in two directions of the game both really wants you to be playing it as much as possible and also has a disinterest in giving you things that will like make each play session feel different, right? Something I'm already, and this is going to come as no surprise, like, this is going to be a very, like, haha, like, Madelyn, of course you feel this way about the game kind of moment for anyone who listens to this podcast with any regularity or knows me. But I really appreciate the concrete goals that Cozy Grove gives you every day. I think a lot of the reason, well, I fell off of Animal Crossing because I had real life animal neighbors invade my apartment and I moved and I got out of the habit of playing every day and that broke the cycle for me. But I also fell out of Animal Crossing because I had reached the point, and this was right before, like, I think I've missed a semi-major update sometime in the past year or so since I was last playing regularly. But this was also, like, I stopped playing in, like, August or so of 2020. And after that, there were not that, like, this was we were heading into kind of, like, a dead zone of nothing much new happened. I mean, there were new holidays, of course. But I was just feeling like I was not at the level of investment or just the level of, like, design talent that I was really gonna, like, terraform my whole freaking island and turn it into something, right, for no reason. And I was just running out of, like, tasks that felt like I was achieving anything. So that definitely made me fall off of the game, because as much as I enjoyed checking in with my neighbors, there just, like, wasn't anything like that new. Like, when you got lucky and the neighbors would talk to each other, which I know never happened on your island, right?
Never.
It's like, oh my gosh, like, what a treat. And something I'm really enjoying about Cozy Grove that I wish Animal Crossing did. Like, how hard would it be to have your neighbors ask you to do things for them just a little more often and a little bit more variety of it than they do? Right? Sometimes they'll ask you to, like, deliver something to someone else, or, like, but it's so uncommon. And I just feel like something that would have helped me as someone devoted to checklists in Animal Crossing was, you know, are there more ways that I can interact with my neighbors, which are my favorite part of the game, and do things for them that feel active?
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing the same fishing competition over and over and over again, or the same catching bugs over and over and over again. And here, while the tasks in Cozy Grove aren't exactly anything groundbreaking, right? It's like, catch 3 uncommon fish, find something hidden on the island. Those ones are hard. I'm having a hard time with the find quests sometimes, but that's okay. You know, craft something.
Apparently there is, like, a spirit you can ask if you need a hint.
Yes, and I have been. That's the thing, but I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed when I have to do that. To be fair, sometimes the hints are, like, not helpful. It's like, buy a folding chair, and then it was not by the folding chair. I was like, okay, fine. Whatever. But yeah, I'm enjoying that you have these tasks that you can accomplish for each of your spirit friends each day. And then, like, it's done for the day.
I believe each of the spirit friends also have, like, their own story that you get to discover as you continue to play. I
feel like Animal Crossing could work that in as well.
That would be
so
nice.
Lame. Not to make this whole thing about Animal Crossing, but it's so lame, the disinterest in doing things that would be easy and cool for that game. But whatever.
I mean, it definitely feels like it leaned into, like, the decorating aspect. Like, that's, like, the selling point of New Horizons, in a way that I did not feel like it was in the previous games that we've played. And that's not what we're interested in, usually, you know? I mean, I like cosmetics. I like dressing my characters up funny. But, yeah, I wasn't going to terraform my whole island.
Cozy Grove did just get an Animal Crossing style free update, their autumn update. So I got to meet the Halloween spirits, which does give me a little bit of that Animal Crossing FOMO of like, oh, I have to do the Halloween spirits stuff like right now because they're not always going to be here. So I did tap into a little bit of that unhealthy play style for that. But it's cool. I got to go I got in a costume and I went trick-or-treated with my neighbors. And they gave me candy. So,
cute.
Not so bad. Could probably do that on Animal Crossing tomorrow, too, but I won't. Today. Today is Halloween, not tomorrow. Today.
I feel like you give your neighbors candy in Animal Crossing.
That seems plausible to me. Yeah.
Like, you just walk around and give them candy for some reason.
Like a good person does.
I guess so. It's not really how trick-or-treating works, though. You don't, like, go outside and be like, candy? Does anybody want some candy?
That's what I'm going to do outside of my apartment tonight. Be like, candy, anyone? Candy?
Are there any children in the vicinity?
Children. Anyway, if you're looking for a relaxed-ish alternative to Animal Crossing, and you're not too picky about any of it being too deep, I would recommend Cozy Grove. Again, like, if you, like me, are looking down toward the end of the year and you're feeling like, I need a game that's going to make me feel like I'm accomplishing things and I can get things done on my list, Cozy Grove might be the game for you.
Does it feel like if, anyone out there is being forced back into the office or is going back to the office, would it be a good commute game, do you think? It sort of strikes me as a good commute game on the Switch.
I think it would be a good commute game. I meant to bring it in with me on my ride into the theater the other day, and then I just forgot because I was running late. Anyway, no one cares about me running late to work. Yeah, I do think it would be a good commute game if your commute involves a significant portion on the train.
Yeah.
If your commute involves a long walk from a train station to your office,
well, yeah.
Not that would be me, but if that is your commute, the Switch is maybe not your best friend. But yeah, it runs okay on the Switch. It's a little bit laggy, is what I've experienced. I did not realize that it was on PlayStation 4, or I probably would have bought it there. But I do think it would be a solid commute game and might help you to unwind and let go of your work-related stress at the end of the day. But it's also probably a good game for playing on your lunch break. Like, it's definitely a game. I'll admit that I put a little bit of pressure on myself to, like, I don't want to quit until I've gotten all of the tasks for the day done so I can be maximally efficient. Mm-hmm. But if you have a healthier brain about tasks than I do, you would probably not feel that way. Mm-hmm. I admit I was feeling that way a little bit because I was like, I want to experience as much of the game as I can before I talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
And I hope to be chiller about it moving forward.
That'd be good.
And it's got a fishing minigame, so...
It's gotta. Can only be classified as a game if it has a fishing minigame, I think.
Kane and Lynch is not a game.
It's not a game. Not by today's standards.
The fishing minigame is both easier and less stressful than the Animal Crossing fishing, though.
That's good.
Sort of. I don't know. The challenge isn't quite there, but that's okay.
I wonder, I would like to read a paper on why there is such a surge of fishing minigames. Or maybe it's just imagined in my mind. But it feels like there's a lot of fishing minigames.
I feel like
what is the psychological reason for that?
The history of the fishing minigame.
Yeah. Again, the influence of Final Fantasy 15 on the general gaming scene, you know?
This can be the next play this video, right? Fishing games?
Fishing games. That would be good. I'm just saying, that would be an interesting topic. I feel like every game has to have a fishing minigame. And it's not, like, I understand, like, petting things, you know? That's for Twitter, you know, clout.
This game has that, too. You can hug the spirits, which also reminded me of Spiritfarer, and you can pet your bird pets.
That's good. So I understand that trend, but what is the fishing minigame trend? I wish to understand.
It all comes back to they're really trying to attract the, mechanical fish on the wall demographic.
Is that why?
Yeah.
It's like the ones who got the singing fish. They really want them to play video games. Okay. I understand now.
All right, well, that's been our show. We don't mash up games at the end, so talk to you next week.
I was thinking a little bit during the course of the show, and I think the most, like, functional mashup would just be, like, Hotline Miami.
Okay.
Like, just that. It's sort of like the pixelated style, and you have, like, discrete levels, like, you can play one a day, and it, like, is, like, you know, your level time, and it's, like, got hyper violence until the end when you, like, it goes silent and you walk back through your rows of bodies, and you're like, man, I sure killed a lot of people. That's what Hotline Miami is, and I feel like that's just this. That's the mashup. It's already been made.
That we usually try not to do that.
I'm giving us a starting point. I'm giving us a launch pad, you know?
It's like, okay, what can we deal with here? So, Kane and Lynch is actively unpleasant to play. Maybe the idea is the game is like, can you even manage to play 10 minutes a day?
That would be interesting. That's an interesting experiment, you know?
Right? It's like, it's so unpleasant.
The question is, like, how do you get people to do that unless they're, like, you know, incredibly masochistic or reviewers, I guess.
You get the Twitch stream demographic on it, right? It's like the ideal game for a streamer.
Oh, like a dare type game.
Yeah, like just like watching people on like get jump scared. It's that. It's like, yeah, can you even manage to play 20 minutes at a time? I don't know what the gameplay is, but I think that there's a market for this.
You're right. I think there's maybe... I don't know. Does that matter? Kane and Lynch, too, didn't care about its market, so we don't have to either.
But no, I think it's like... Okay, so it's got, like, you know, it's in the tradition of, like, a horror thing, right? So probably... I mean, and that's easy, right? Probably... I don't know if you want it to be with, like, ghosts, right? That might be bad. Oh, but it would have to be, like...
Why are ghosts bad?
What?
Why are ghosts bad?
I just feel like the ghosts are too cute, and like killing ghosts is like there's just not enough reality to it.
Maybe you only see them as ghosts, you know.
Interesting. Okay. I'm just sort of feeling like in this game you kind of have to do like increasingly like horrible things. Like it's, you know, it's the game that makes you decide like, are you going to kill the dog? Right?
Is it a demon dog?
No, it's just a good dog.
Then no.
But see, then you
what's the
lose.
setup here?
You have to stop playing the game.
Oh, I don't like that. I feel like
That's
it has
the point.
to be...
The point is that you don't like it.
I just mean I don't like it as a mashup. I don't feel like that pulls from either of the games, though.
I mean, I know. That was not a great example. But I'm sort of feeling like, you know, if it's just like intense violence, that won't work. You have like daily tasks you have to complete for your bosses. Mm-hmm. And those daily tasks are very brutal. I don't really know what that is, though. Like, what is even shocking anymore? Or maybe it's like an embarrassment thing. It's like you go in and your character screws it up right at the beginning. And like, can you handle the secondhand embarrassment of this character just messing up every single time? It doesn't even have to be violent. It's just like, oops, you called your boss mom. Like, can you recover?
What is the gameplay of that, though? That feels like you're just watching it, you know?
There's like a fetch quest element, a fishing minigame.
A fishing minigame, you're right. There has to be a fishing minigame. That's what it is. It's the most deeply unpleasant fishing minigame you've ever played.
There we go.
Can you play it for at least 20 minutes?
It's like real fishing.
Yeah. You send streamers to try fishing for real and see if they can do it.
That'd be a pretty good, you know what? That's also a pretty good free content series, right? Like,
that's true. Can you fish for real?
I don't feel like this was strong.
I think there's some nuggets of good ideas in there. I don't think we coalesce them into anything.
Yeah.
I like the idea of can you play this for 20 minutes? I think that's a good like artsy fartsy pushing games type idea. It's just hard to decide then what that should actually be.
It's like it's a shooter, but the input lag is super bad and the frame rate drops. This has nothing to do with any of the games, but
every time you miss a shot, the frame rate drops. It attacks the game. Yeah. Very, very Yoko Taro of you there.
You know what? Yoko Taro would be the person if someone was going to successfully make a can you play it for 20 minutes game. Like, that is a brain I'd like to have in the room.
That's true.
Well, folks, have you played either of the Kane and Lynch's or Cozy Grove? Kane and Lynch really sounds like it's going to be like a cop game, by the way. That's what I
it's got that cadence to it, yeah.
Kane and Lynch. And it's just not.
On ABC.
Exactly. 8/7 Central. So anyway, listeners, have you played either of the Kane and Lynch games? Have you played Cozy Grove? Do you think that Kane and Lynch is a cult classic, or at least something interesting, or did you just play it and hate it? Do you have ideas for, like, what kind of gimmicky can you last 20 minutes streamer game we should create? If you have thoughts about any of this or anything else in the episode, hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat, and read our blog, featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. And if you dig back far enough, a blog where I talk about games as to-do lists, which feels relevant to today's episode. Yeah. And finally, if you enjoyed the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast. Anywhere that you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. So next week is a side quest. My choice. Have not thought about it yet, but it's going to be something.
It's going to be something.
It's going to be about how do you get a PS5 on Black Friday. Just kidding.
Don't do it.
You don't. But Emma, what games will we be talking about in 2 weeks from the hat?
Our old game is going to be Warcraft.
Nice.
Probably talk about that World of Warcraft. All
Did you say
of that.
World of Woodcraft?
I said Warcraft.
Okay.
It's just the way I speak and enunciate things, which is badly. And our new game is going to be WarioWare. Get it together.
Okay, that's good, because I was like, I'm not playing World of Warcraft, so maybe WarioWare.
Even World of Warcraft players, I've been seeing on Twitter that they've been made like a mass exodus to Final Fantasy XIV recently, which has caused some butting of heads, I believe. So.
Well, folks, get excited for my joke, which will inevitably be World of WarioWare. Mm-hmm. WarioWare Warcraft. Right? There's like something to do there.
There's something to do there.
So as I workshop that, we'll bring this episode to an end. Emma, do you have a send-off for this strange little episode?
I hope your week has some aggressively ugly fish ghosts in it.